The most interesting and newsworthy television show of the year is coming here to TCN. We are not bragging, that's actually true.
The president's been shot. I repeat, the president's been shot.
So our longtime producer, Justin Wells, and a team have been embedded, with no publicity at all, with Donald Trump on the campaign trail for months. They're the only crew capturing what is going on the campaign in real time, intimately. They're with Trump as he campaigns for the presidency across the country, and they've shot some amazing footage. It shows you what it's really like in there. So if you're a member, you will soon be able to get this docu-series covering the historic campaign, the fall of Joe Biden, never-before-seen footage from the assassination attempt at the Butler Township, Pennsylvania Trump rally, and a lot more. It's going to pull back the curtain completely. They are embedded inside the campaign. I can't wait to see it personally. But to get it first, go to tuckercarlson.com, become a member. The greatest television event of the year. We're proud to offer it. Okay, I want to introduce our next guest. And I know a lot about our next guest because I was there when all of this happened. So our next guest is Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, can I just tell you a super quick Tulsi Gabbard story? So Tulsi Gabbard shows up in DC about maybe 10 years ago or so. She can fill in the numbers. And Tulsi Gabbard is the single most famous freshman Democratic congressman ever elected, okay? So the Democrats look at Tulsi Gabbard. She's a military veteran. She's very articulate. She's smart. And everybody just likes Tulsi Gabbard. There's a vibe question about people, and everyone just likes Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, I've been in a million events with Tulsi Gabbard. People are like, oh, I love you, Tulsi Gabbard. So the talent scouts of the Democratic Party are like, oh, she's going to be president. And so they start writing all these pieces, which ran in the New York Times, Washington Post, everywhere. Tulsi Gabbard is the rising star in the Democratic Party. So she shows up, and this goes on. They make her vice chair of the DNC before she even got to DC. And everything's fine for about a year and a half. And one day, there's a foreign policy debate about Syria. And Tulsi Gabbard, who has, spent a lot of time in the US military and known people who've been killed in these various wars, pipes up and says, is there a good reason to have yet another pointless war? And within about 15 seconds, Tulsi Gabbard goes from being the future of the Democratic Party to a dangerous fascist who must be imprisoned. And it was watching this that I realized, oh, that's what they actually care about. What they actually care about is the ability to continue to fight pointless wars because that's where all the money is. That's where all the money is. And if you don't believe it, maybe you haven't checked your phone today to see that Dick Cheney and his horrible daughter have endorsed Kamala Harris. Dick Cheney. Now, why is that? What does Dick Cheney have in common with Kamala Harris? And it's really interesting, actually, because they're constantly telling us that the divides are along race and gender. And they were always telling us Dick Cheney is this rich white guy, and Kamala Harris is this oppressed woman of color. They've got nothing in common. But actually, they have everything in common. Because they're both neocons. That's exactly right. They have everything in common. And it tells you what a lie this race and gender stuff is. That's not the divide. The divide is in your heart. And if you think it's okay to kill people in order to get rich, you're on their side. And if you don't, you're on our side, no matter what you look like. And Tulsi Gabbard proved that. And then she began this long journey, which culminated in her endorsement of Trump, and I'll let her tell the rest. But we're honored to have her tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Tulsi Gabbard. Thank you for coming.
Aloha.
Aloha. I love that you came with a lei. That's so great.
Gotta represent.
So I have to, I just feel like I brought up Cheney. You know, there are a lot of bad people in the world. I don't think Cheney's the worst person in the world in the running, but I could think of others. But I don't want that event, the Cheney endorsement, the family endorsement of Kamala Harris, of all people, to pass by without examining its significance. This feels like, if historians were honest, this is an event that they would write about 50 years from now, when the actual architecture of the world became clear to everybody. This is what's really going on. This is how it really works. But I'll stop and ask you what you think of it.
I have a very simple message for my Democrat friends, my independent friends, those who may not be sure about who they're voting for in this election. Dick Cheney has just made the choice very clear. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for Dick Cheney, the architect of everything that has gone wrong in the Middle East for the last few decades. And so it's interesting because if you listen to the New York Times or some of the other mainstream media, they're saying, oh, you know, don't expect much from Kamala Harris in the way of policies and details and plans, and we're not going to know much about what kind of president she's going to be because she doesn't have much time. They're conveniently ignoring the fact that she's been there working in the White House the last 3.5 years alongside Joe Biden. She's been the last one in the room, according to her, as these big decisions are being made. But we look at who she says, her response to the Dick Cheney announcement today was that she was honored to have his endorsement. And we got military veterans in the House. Got a lot of you who probably served in the Middle East like I did. And so it sickened me, Tucker, to read those words today, both from Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, and Kamala Harris, because we have people who we care very much about who were killed in those wars because of Dick Cheney. Kamala Harris has told us all we need to know about what kind of commander-in-chief she would be. And I don't know about you, but I would not trust her for a moment with the lives of my brothers and sisters in uniform.
So you were a sitting Democratic member of Congress, and you know them all, obviously. Them all, from Hillary Clinton, who hates you with a special kind of ferocity. I think she's called for putting you in prison.
This is true.
I think she literally wants to put you in prison. I think she said that. So I'm happy to have you join the exclusive club that I belong to. But like, what do they think of this? It's the Democratic Party, at least when I was growing up, was the party of, you know, hold a bake sale. The Pentagon doesn't need more bombers or whatever. And now it's just kill them all, let God sort them out because we're getting rich doing it. Are they comfortable with this? Like, what do they think of this behind closed doors?
This is again showing kind of the realignment where you have Adam Kinzinger and Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney supporting and endorsing Kamala Harris proudly, people who have been neocons and are neocons, not hesitating to say, let's go to war in any and all situations, regardless of the cost and consequence. And then you have people like Bobby Kennedy and myself and others who are standing with Donald Trump, not because we agree on every single thing under the sun, but because we agree on the most important things, which is really about our ability as Americans to live and thrive in a truly free and prosperous society. And we cannot be free or prosperous unless we're at peace.
I remember when the war in Ukraine broke out in February of 2022, and I just want to say at the outset, there are tons of people I respect and love and am related to who had very different views of that war than mine. I don't judge anyone who reaches different conclusions. But the one thing that I do judge people on is not caring about getting in a nuclear war. I just have too many children, I guess. And you were one of the first people to say, you know, whatever you think of this conflict or how it started or how it might end, we should be concerned because this is the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet, and we could wind up in a nuclear war that would kill everyone in the world. And I remember that you were denounced as like a Nazi for worrying about nuclear war.
Yeah.
And now we're even closer. Does anyone in Washington understand this or care?
They don't care. That's a fact. If they did care, they wouldn't speak so easily about the fact that we are closer to the brink of nuclear war than ever before in our country's history. I was warning about this back in 2019, 2020 when I was running for president, talking about this threat, how if we are continuing to wage what then I called a new Cold War, if we're continuing to increase tensions and heighten tensions with other nuclear-armed countries in the world, the inevitable outcome of that is nuclear war, and we should all be very clear-eyed about what that means. That if a nuclear missile was headed our way, which, by the way, all of us in this country are within range of a nuclear missile, what happens? You might get an alert go off on your phone saying, as we did in Hawaii, as you remember back in 2017, we had this missile alert that went off saying, missile inbound to Hawaii. Seek shelter immediately, this is not a drill. And so for everyone across Hawaii that morning, there was that thought like, wow, I may only have 15 minutes to live. And just like we're sitting here in this hall here tonight, people may have been sitting on the beach, it was early on a Saturday morning, or making breakfast or whatever was going on. What do? Where do you go? There is no shelter. And therefore, then there is the inevitable realities that if there is a nuclear war, it results in annihilation of all living things. And yet so I was talking about this and warning about this when I was running for president every single day, multiple times a day, every single town hall, trying to open people's eyes up and get other candidates for president to talk about this, get the media to talk about this, because no one wanted to do it. I even had a reporter who came up to me who was, they have these reporters who follow the different candidates around, and she came up to me and she's like, Tulsi, you talk about this every single day. Don't you have anything else to talk about? What is there to talk about if we are in the midst of a nuclear Armageddon? What else is there to talk about? And so fast forward to now where we are today, unfortunately things have gotten far, far much worse, not better. And you have these so-called security experts and defense experts and pundits on television being so dangerous and careless, talking about nuclear war, and we have these smaller nuclear weapons, and we'll drop one, and we'll send a strong message, and talking about a nuclear bomb as though you can just go lob a nuclear bomb and there will be no consequence. And they're lying to the American people in doing so. It is so incredibly dangerous because that's not real. It's not rooted in reality. Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev said it best in 1985 when they issued that joint statement together, recognizing this risk, saying that a nuclear war cannot be won and should never be fought. And yet we have the neocons, Democrats and Republicans alike, who are eager to push us into this potential of World War III that can only end in a nuclear war.
Well, how's this for crazy? Has there ever been a more volatile time in American politics? Not in our lifetimes. No one alive has ever seen anything like this. But long before things started to really fall apart, the Heritage Foundation saw it coming. Heritage has pulled together a coalition of over 100 right-leaning groups to develop a comprehensive plan for day one. That would include detailed policy proposals on the most pressing issues, the big ones: securing the border, controlling inflation, cracking down on election fraud, protecting the rights of the individual, and saving the nation from being crushed by woke anti-human ideology. The team at Heritage has also developed a plan to dismantle the deep state that keeps this nonsense going and reclaim this nation from the small group of technocrats that's broken everything. Heritage is also running a training and vetting program to identify effective conservatives to serve in the next presidential administration. People who will share your values, this country's values, and actually do the job. It can't just be the same pool of discredited people from Washington populating every administration. Heritage has a long head start, and they put in a lot of work already, but they need your support to finish the job and to support the incoming president. You can go to heritage.org/Tucker and contribute to this important work today. A lot depends on it. heritage.org/Tucker.
So, people throw around the word demonic, but if that's not demonic, then what is, kind of? If you have no regard for the lives of your own people, then what won't you do?
And you talked about this. I mean, there are a lot of people making a lot of money around continuing to, yes, it's fomenting fear, but continuing to push us closer because, okay, well, we have to build new weapons and bigger weapons and more powerful weapons, as though, we have over 5,000 nuclear weapons. Russia has, I think, over 6,000. It takes one. It takes one. And the nuclear weapons we have today are many, many, many times more powerful than what was used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's the bottom line. And this is both what is so dark about this moment that we are in as a country, but also what should give us hope in this election is that it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. I know you've talked to President Trump. I've talked to President Trump. He has raised it behind closed doors and over again in public, the seriousness of the prospect of nuclear war, and talked about his commitment to walking us back from the brink. So really the choice is ours as voters. And so as you have conversations with your friends who may not know quite what to do, or they're like, I don't know, I don't like the way Donald Trump tweets or what he says, fine. Let's talk about our ability to live. Let's just start there.
So I guess I'm repeating the same point again and again because it shocks me every single day, but the ruthlessness and the recklessness of the people currently in charge doesn't seem to have any boundaries at all. And I just am struck by the fact that our foreign policy, which most of us ignore, I spent most of my life ignoring foreign policy, does seem to be driving domestic policy, right? So one of the ways that they tried to delegitimize you and threatened actually to criminally charge you was by claiming that you were somehow allied with a foreign government. We just saw indictments this week by the Biden administration meant to cast doubt on criticism of the Biden administration. Oh, it's Russia. Kamala's losing, it's Russia again. I'm worried, they put a bunch of people I know in prison already, a bunch. I have a friend in prison right now for doing nothing, Steve Bannon. I'm worried that if Kamala Harris wins, lots of people are going to go to prison on the grounds that they are somehow allied with foreign countries. Do you see this happening?
It's all, as you said, it's already happening. And we've seen how both Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have no hesitation whatsoever to weaponize our Department of Justice and law enforcement in order to put their political to punish their political opponents. That press conference that Merrick Garland did announcing those indictments, I wasn't surprised, frankly, to see them waving the Russia flag as they are revealing their concern that Kamala Harris might not win this election. But what I thought about was, gosh, this is what the Attorney General and the FBI Director was sitting right next to him. This is what they're focused on. Why aren't they focused on innocent, everyday, law-abiding Americans being put on secret domestic terror watch lists?
Do you know anybody who's wound up on one of those lists?
I have a little experience with this.
Will you tell us?
So I travel a lot. I'm on planes more days of the week than I'm probably not on planes. And one day my husband and I were traveling together and we got this SSSS on our boarding pass. We have pre-check. Pre-check didn't work and went through all of this additional screening with pre-check and thought, okay, the TSA guy said, this is random, just be patient. Like, okay, got it. You got to do the thing. And then the next day and the next flight happened again. The next day and the next flight, it happened again. My husband and I split off. He was going one direction, I was going another direction. We both went through it. We were both getting this treatment, and I was honestly getting kind of pissed. There was a whole lot that went into it, but it wasn't until about a week later. I knew there was something going on because once or twice, yeah, okay, maybe, but 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times in a row, clearly something was happening. And I talked to a TSA supervisor in one of these airports, and he's looking at my military ID card. He's like, "Why is this happening to you? You're in the military." I was like, "You're telling me, buddy." And he's like, "First of all, this is way above my pay grade." But what he shared with me was very revealing, and he said that he had a lot of friends who were Trump supporters who had no problems traveling. Then all of a sudden, all of them started getting this Quad S on their boarding pass. You got to go 45 minutes through TSA and all this other stuff. And he looked at me and he's like, there's something fishy going on here. And I was like, "Yeah, I think I should make some calls." And he said, "You should make some calls." And he had no idea that I had anything to do with politics at all. As far as he knew, he had never heard Tulsi Gabbard before. He was just like, "Military, what's going on here?" Air Marshal whistleblowers came forward about a week and a half later and provided evidence. They took pictures of the targeting package. For those of you in the military, you know what that means. They took pictures of the targeting package that the TSA made for me that showed I had been added to the secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies, and the words operational was on that targeting package. And unbeknownst to me, had a little bit of an idea, but unbeknownst to me, for those last week and a half or 2 weeks, I had had at least 3 federal air marshals following me and traveling with me everywhere I went. And there were K-9 teams, there were EOD teams. I was getting swabbed for traces of explosives, not only in the initial going through TSA, but again before even boarding the plane at the gate. I told the guys at the gate, I was like, they just checked me like 10 minutes ago. We got to do it again. It's not them. Clearly, this was an act of political retaliation for my criticisms and warning the country about what kind of dangerous President Commander-in-Chief Kamala Harris would be. And so this is still going on today. Sometimes I get the Quad S, sometimes I don't, but I've heard from people who have confirmed that my targeting package is still operational.
So, I mean, you're an Army officer, we're a sitting member of the United States Congress, you're a presidential candidate, and you're on the terror watch list. So, and there's nothing you can do about it. So how is that different from any other secret police force in any other country?
This is the thing, it's not. It's not. And if we had an attorney general who cared about our freedom, our civil liberties, about the integrity of a democratic republic where we can speak our mind and express ourselves and criticize our own government, guaranteed by our First Amendment right, perhaps our Attorney General and the FBI would be investigating these acts of abuse of power and political retaliation.
Well, yeah, because if you boil it down, what it means is if you criticize Kamala Harris, people with guns follow you around.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the only one. I mean, there's an FBI agent who was a whistleblower because he could not stomach anymore what he was seeing, which was how the FBI was being told to send out heavily armed SWAT teams to go and kick down doors of peaceful pro-life protesters in the middle of the night. This abuse of power and how even the very first counterterrorism head of counterterrorism the FBI had, he is retired now, but he came out and said it sickens him because the FBI has essentially become the police arm of the Democratic Party. So how is this any different from Venezuela or any other country that's being run by a dictator or an authoritarian leader? And so the hypocrisy is so rich. Again, going back to the Cheneys, they say that they have to vote for Kamala Harris because Donald Trump is the greatest threat to our democracy. I don't know how they say this with a straight face. I really don't.
When the current regime has a secret police force that has people with guns hassle its critics, that imprisons its critics,
yes,
that tries to silence half the country for criticizing them, but Trump, because he criticizes them, is the main threat to democracy. I mean,
and he has the audacity to talk about things like, hey, we should not be waging regime change wars. We should not be sending our men and women in uniform to go and fight unnecessary, counterproductive wars of choice. That's really why they're coming after him.
I just back up one moment. So we know that the FBI has been utterly politicized. It doesn't mean every field agent is corrupt. I don't think that's true. It means the leadership is utterly corrupt, and it's being used as as you said, the police arm of the Democratic Party. So here you have the Republican Party, which controls the House of Representatives, and its Speaker, Mike Johnson of Louisiana, just refunded the FBI and built them a new building, just rewarded them for this behavior. So you have to kind of wonder if the Republican Speaker is on the same side as the police arm of the Democratic Party, we're in trouble.
We are in trouble. This Quiet Skies terror watch list that I'm on, Congress has never seen who's on the list. How many other secret terror watch lists
Wait,
are there?
Congress can't see who's on the list?
Congress has asked for the TSA director to come in and show who's on the list. To my knowledge to date, and I'm in touch with some of my former colleagues, they have yet to see the list. Senator Rand Paul and many other members of Congress, they sent letters of investigation demanding, show your documentation. If you put Tulsi Gabbard on a terror watch list, you must have a pretty damn good reason for doing it. Show the evidence to Congress. And the deadline passed. They have delivered no evidence. But this goes to what you're talking about. If we don't have leaders with courage who are committed to the Constitution and the interests of the American people first and last, then we end up with what we have in the permanent Washington establishment, with people who are more concerned about not ruffling feathers than actually rooting out the deep rot of corruption that has long existed in our government across Democrat and Republican administrations in Congress. That's what we have the opportunity to fix in this election and to begin to start to get things right.
Some of the most important things in life are also the easiest to put off. You think about them, they seem time-consuming and hard. They're not actually time-consuming and hard, but you just don't do them. But you should. Mowing the lawn, paying the bills, working out, not eating Oreos. The list is long. Shopping for a life insurance policy is something that seems very difficult. Also, something you don't want to deal with or face. Life insurance? That makes me think about death. But you got to do it. You should do it for yourself and your family. And with Policy Genius, it's not hard at all. Policy Genius helps you get the life insurance you need fast so you can get on with your actual life. 40% of people with life insurance wish they'd gotten their policy at a younger age. That is wise. That's true. It's also cheap when you're younger. So today is the day to start putting it off and do it. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options even offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Really easy. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It gives you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. They've got no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust that they're not scamming you. They don't have some sort of inside deal steering you in one direction. They want to get you the lowest price. They've got thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who said this actually works. It's great. So you don't need to put off getting life insurance. Go to policygenius.com/Tucker to get free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Tucker.
It does seem like while the rest of us were sleeping, dissent has been reclassified as a crime. And dissent on foreign policy questions has been reclassified as treason. Yesterday, somebody sent me a statement by an editor at Newsweek magazine called Josh Hammer, who was claiming that I was funded by Russia. I was taking Russian money. And I laughed. I don't care what Newsweek, to the extent it still exists, I don't even know what it is, right? I was taking money from Russia. Yeah, okay. But my friend said, no. This is significant because it's a pretext for a criminal charge. Of course, the media, Josh Hammer of Newsweek, whoever that is, acting in concert with the Kamala and Biden administration to set up critics for criminal charges and for spying and for terror watch lists and for harassment and ultimately for prison. I don't think I'm being paranoid.
You're not, unfortunately, because there's precedent for it of how they're manufacturing the evidence in order to create the crime that they're accusing you of having committed. This is out of like the Stalin playbook, literally out of the Stalin playbook. And what's even worse is they're doing it in broad daylight because they really believe that they can get away with it.
Well, they are getting away with it. So I have to ask, just to leaven the mood a little bit, what's Hillary Clinton like? You're probably the only person in this room who would know.
It wouldn't surprise you to know that she's not too fond of me.
She hates you like the devil hates holy water.
So when I resigned as vice chair of the DNC in 2016, specifically so that I could campaign against Hillary Clinton in that Democratic primary, I think it was the first debate, the first primary debate that they had, first or second. It was one of the early ones. And I was doing an interview with MSNBC outside the hall of the debate. I think it was in Miami. And I don't remember who the host was, but I could see them and hear them in my ear. And they said, "Tulsi Gabbard, you're coming out and criticizing Hillary Clinton and her foreign policy record. Aren't you afraid of what she'll do to you?" He asked me this on live television on MSNBC. And you're laughing. I laughed too. I was like, no, I am not afraid of what Hillary Clinton can do to me. But what was interesting about Washington, though, and you know this very well because you've been there and around these people for so long, I announced this on a show called Meet the Press that's every Sunday morning on live. I did not tell a single soul, including the host, what I was going there to say. I said, I will come and break news on your show. I didn't tell a single soul because you don't trust anybody in Washington.
No.
What I was going there to say, I made my announcement, sent a letter to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was chair of the DNC at the time, 30 seconds before I walked out onto set and was going on live TV. And the next day I went back to the House of Representatives, went back to work in Congress, and my Democrat colleagues looked at me like I was a dead man walking. And some of them, came up to me and patted me on the back, and they were like, "Okay, well, you have zero future in politics, number one. Number two, Hillary Clinton will get elected, and your constituents in Hawaii will not get a single penny for anything that they need. You did that by coming out against Hillary Clinton." And the third was a guy who came up to me, and he was full of sympathy and even empathy, and he's like, "Tulsi, first of all, you know there's a list, right?" I was like, "No. What are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh, trust me, there's a list. You are now at the top of the list, and I know because I used to be on it, and it took me 15 years to climb my way off Hillary Clinton's shit list."
How much groveling do you have to do to get off?
I don't even want to know. Apparently, he worked real hard. He worked real hard to get off that list.
Why would you? I mean, I don't want to be mean or whatever. You're the exception to the rule, but the rule is that you come to Washington and abandon not just your principles, but your self-respect. Like, how could your spouse love you after watching how craven and disgusting you are? And yet they all do it. Why do they do that? Why don't more people just say, "No, I believe this. My constituents back wherever I'm from want this. I'm sorry we disagree, but I'm going to represent them." Why does nobody do that?
You know, it's a really unfortunate thing that I've seen happen to a lot of people who I've considered friends over the years who go to Washington maybe with the best of intentions to go and serve their constituents and serve the country and actually fix what's broken, but very quickly get caught up in this facade of love and adoration and power. The first like reception that I went to in Washington, I went and there's a couple hundred people there. I went and stood in line to go get a soda or whatever from the bar, and a guy who was standing in front of me looked back, and he's like, oh, I was not even sworn in yet. I was a representative-elect. He's like, oh, you're a new member of Congress. I said, yeah, nice to meet you, yada, yada, yada. He's like, why are you standing in line? I said, well, there is a line. I'm going to stand in line and wait for my turn. He said, no, you don't understand. That's not how this town works. You are a member of Congress now, and you will never stand in line again in this town. Struck me as kind of a very strange thing to say. But it was that kind of mentality that I saw very quickly turn people who were cool, friendly, normal, to all of a sudden walking through those halls believing the hype that they were actually so important, that they were above the rest of us, the rest of the little guys. And really how that translates is, oh, what embassy party did you get invited to, or whose table did you sit at the White House Correspondents' Dinner? It becomes about status and popularity amongst those who thrive in that little corrupt Washington bubble, and they forget about why they're actually there and who they're supposed to be serving. And that's why you get all of these, you get these situations where people think that they know better for the American people than we do for ourselves. And they make these decisions that end up serving their own selfish political ambition and their own self-interest or their own pockets, rather than actually just saying, what's the right thing for the people in this country?
Again, I don't want to be mean, but you're it's from an outsider's perspective, in a tiny, tiny, tiny minority of members of Congress, or in your case, former members of Congress with balanced lives. Who have interests outside of just accumulating power, who have close relationships with their family. I know some of your family, and you definitely do have a close relationship with them. I don't know, who love animals, who, have a non-weird sex life. I don't know, just like normal stuff. I'm serious. Like, it does seem like Congress
I'm glad we're all friends here.
It's true, though. It's the percentage of people in the Congress who are just like kind of freaks is really high. Am I right?
Do you remember the guy who got caught with a photo of him in a furry costume?
It could have been anybody.
Not me.
No, I know.
For the record. No, it's, yeah. The core of this really is that when you have people in a position to make decisions that affect all of us here, and frankly, decisions that will affect the world, who are not grounded in a deep sense of a higher purpose. Whether that higher purpose is living a life trying to be pleasing to God, or that higher purpose is, let me dedicate my time and energy every single day as a representative of the people to actually work for the people. If you are not grounded in that purpose every single day, you see how people fall for the little false trinkets that are offered in Washington, and how quickly they lose their way, and how quickly they end up serving the interests of the lobbyists who, give them a lot of money, or whatever it may be. Whoever their influence is, whoever it is they're trying to please, they are not actually trying to please the people, and they associate their entire identity with that title that's on the wall, in the door to their office. And they're terrified of losing it, because then if they lose that, well, then they think, well, nobody will love me if I don't have this title. Well, what am I going to do? So then, okay, well, I'm going to do whatever it takes to stay in this position of so-called power, because then people will love me, or people will like me, or people invite. It's such a twisted mindset, but you can understand in some ways how people will lose that sense of quote-unquote normalness that you're talking about, or that groundedness in your family and in your community and your relationship with God, and you end up chasing all of the wrong things. And the problem is, you're not just harming yourself. You're harming the people of this country, and that is what is unacceptable. Make your own decisions with your own life. Fine, live your own life. But you should not be in a position where you are impacting the lives of the American people when you're really only thinking about yourself.
Amen. I do think one of the things that sets you apart from not all, but many of your colleagues, is that you had a spiritual center. You weren't looking for deep affirmation from them or anyone else. Do you think that there's some kind of religious revival, low-key religious revival going on in this country? You travel constantly. Do you feel that?
I really do.
You do?
I do. I feel it here tonight. You've met my husband, Abraham.
Oh, yes.
And he is as...
The name says it all.
It does. He's a cinematographer. He is not into politics at all. He cares very much for others, and he cares very much for our country. He's a very kind person. But I don't ask him to go to political events with me very often because I know he hates them. He absolutely hates them. But it was funny because he came with me to an event recently, and he walked out just saying, "Oh my gosh, everyone there is so nice. People are talking about God in a very sincere and heartfelt way, not afraid to express their faith or their love for our country." And he was sharing this because he's like, "Man, I remember going to some of those Democrat events with you, and it's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite. You have people who are angry, people who are have almost, and I've seen this, have almost a physical reaction if someone says God or says, hey, let's open with a prayer. I've seen people walk out of the room. It's a completely different atmosphere.
You've seen people walk out of the room because of a prayer?
Because they are not comfortable hearing a prayer.
Well, that's pretty revealing. That's
But
pretty heavy.
it's revealing about them, but also when you look at, again, we have this realignment that's happening with both political parties, and you look at that mindset of people who, in Kamala Harris and a lot of people in the Democrat elite, who believe they are above the Constitution. All this stuff about, a boy can be a girl if he says he's a girl, this rejection of objective truth and science. What they're really saying, and this is the most, you and I have talked about this is the most dangerous thing, is when you look at that mindset, whether they admit it or not, whether they know it or not, they are putting themselves in a position of trying to be God, and therefore, in the most offensive way, are not only rejecting our supreme God, but they are trying to force that upon all of us. And you look at that spiritual erosion that's happening in our country, and you look at how they're trying to erase any even mention of God from all facets of our public life, we can see how those destructive policies are causing such damage to us as a society.
Yes, and untold human suffering, which is always the hallmark of evil. Why, when the Biden administration announced Trans Visibility Day on Easter, was there not a national shutdown? People to say, I'm not participating. I mean, that seemed like a line that once you allow the government to cross it, it's not clear where it ends, but nowhere good.
It speaks to this culture of self-censorship and fear. Goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning that they've created. That people are afraid. There was a story that came out about a girl who was fired from her job because of a tweet she put out. That people are afraid of losing their job. People are afraid of losing friends or having family members who won't speak to them anymore if they actually stand up and speak the truth that's obvious to anybody who's willing to be clear-eyed and pay attention to what's really going on. And that is a travesty. And so when you look at why would they put me on a secret terror watch list? Yes, it's political retaliation, but it's more than that. It is to send that chilling message, and I'm not the only one, but to send that chilling message that if you challenge them and you challenge their power, you expose the truth about who they really are and the damage they are causing, then, hey, we can come after Tulsi Gabbard, we can certainly come after you. Nobody is safe.
Well, you are dangerous, actually, in a true sense, because you tell the truth. So let me end on this. I think your presence is really hopeful. Is one of the reasons I was so grateful that you agreed to come.
Thank you.
And because for all of us who sit at home thinking, no one agrees with me, things are going completely crazy, the country I knew is gone. You know, you can really work yourself into a frenzy of despair and pessimism, and then you realize, no, actually, there are people like Tulsi Gabbard, and there are people like everyone in this room who know what's true, sometimes in a very, low-key way. They're not wearing a billboard on the street, but they know they have a spiritual center and a conscience, and that's the majority of Americans, in my opinion, and you're one. But let me just stop with this. Are you feeling hopeful, honestly? And if so, why?
First of all, real hope comes from knowing in our heart of hearts that God loves us unconditionally.
Amen.
So God is eternal and he will always love us. So at a baseline, there is always, he is our source of hope. I am hopeful, while this election will be very close, and I am very concerned, given what's at stake, and given that we know for sure that it's more than just the Democrat machine, as we are seeing. It's the warmongering machine, it's the military-industrial complex, it's the big propaganda media, it's big tech. They are going to throw everything they possibly can at this election to try to make sure that Kamala Harris wins. But I am hopeful because of what our founders envisioned for us as a country. That our government, ultimately, it exists with the consent of the governed. So the outcome of this election is in our hands, which means the future of our country and our freedom is in our hands. And so I want to encourage you, because I know what you're talking about, Tucker, and it is easy sometimes, and I feel it sometimes, where it's just like, man, the forces of darkness are so powerful. Am I really able to make an impact? Am I really able to break through this? And maybe some of you feel this way too sometimes. Don't underestimate the power of your voice and every one of you and your ability to influence those around you, because every one of you has people, whether it's family or friends or coworkers, or if you're in school, students, people who know you, who trust you, who will listen to you, but who may be feeling a little bit lost with everything that's happening in the country, the onslaught of news and all of this stuff that's going on. Don't underestimate your voice and your ability to share what's in your heart, what you're concerned about for our country, and why you're voting the way that you are. Because this election, unlike any other in my lifetime, it's not about Democrats versus Republicans. That's not what this is about. This is about something much bigger. This election, again, we're not going to agree on every issue. Don't be afraid of that. Don't run away from that. We can have conversations, and we should have conversations about things we agree and things we disagree on. We will not be able to have those conversations if we are not living in a free country. And that's what's at stake. So I encourage you to share with those in your circles, in your spheres of influence. This is not about personalities. This is not about who you like or who you dislike. This is a choice between freedom and tyranny. This is a choice between peace and war. This is a choice between prosperity and poverty. Don't take my word for it. Look at the facts and look at the records between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and you will know that what I am saying is true. It's up to us to save our country and save the world and to defend freedom. We can make this happen. We, the people, can make this happen. This is our no-fail mission. You can take a nap on November 6th, work your phone, talk to your friends. We have to do all that we can.
Amen. Tulsi Gabbard, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Tucker. Thank you, everybody.
The big tech companies censor our content. I hate to tell you that, it's still going on in 2024, but you know what they can't censor? Live events. And that's why we are hitting the road on a fall tour for the entire month of September, coast to coast. We will be in cities across the United States. We'll be in Salt Lake City with Glenn Beck, Tulsa, Oklahoma with Dan Bongino, Kansas City with Megyn Kelly, Wichita with Charlie Kirk, Milwaukee with Larry Elder, Rosenberg, Texas with Jesse Kelly, Grand Rapids with Kid Rock, Hershey, Pennsylvania with J.D. Vance, Reading, Pennsylvania with Alex Jones, Fort Worth, Texas with Roseanne Barr, Greenville, South Carolina with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Sunrise, Florida with John Rich, Jacksonville, Florida with Donald Trump Jr. You can get tickets at tuckercarlson.com. Hope to see you there.